In this first month of the new year, I pray that God will bless all of us and our country and world with His grace and peace. For the Catholic Church, this is a very challenging time, inasmuch as the great crime and sin of sexual abuse continues to cast a very dark cloud over the Church's leadership and her clergy. Decisive and very effective steps were taken in 2002. And in many ways, the Church now offers a model for a proactive prevention. But the notorious failure in the case of the former Cardinal McCarrick and the lingering unhealed wounds of past abuse continue to cry out for further action and answers. In December, I announced that the Archdiocese of Hartford would do three things after the new year. First, the Archdiocese would publish the names of archdiocesan clergy from the present going back to 1953, the year in which the Archdiocese of Hartford as such was established, who have been the object of lawsuits and legal settlements or otherwise credibly accused, and the names of religious order priests and priests from other dioceses who have been credibly accused of an offense that took place in the Archdiocese. As of today, these names can be found on the Archdiocesan website, www.archdioceseofhartford.org, specifically in the subsite Promise to Protect. Second, the Archdiocese would contract for an independent review of all of our clergy files going back to 1953 to identify any additional names, with the understanding that the publication of names would be updated as any new information became available. Today, I am pleased to announce that retired Connecticut Superior Court Judge Antonio Rabina, who is now with the law firm of McElroy, Deutsch, Mulvaney, and Carpenter, has been engaged to conduct an independent investigation to provide a comprehensive and transparent accounting of sexual abuse of minors by clergy in the Archdiocese of Hartford and the Archdiocese's response to such abuse. Third, in December, I announced that the Archdiocese would publish the financial outlay that has been made as a result of the abuse of minors by clergy and the sources of these funds. As of today, this too is posted on our Archdiocesan website. Once again, it is important to point out that there are no Archdiocese of Hartford priests currently in ministry in the Archdiocese of Hartford who have had a credible allegation of child sexual abuse asserted against them. In the last 20 years, 2 archdiocesan priests have been credibly accused of sexually abusing a minor during that entire period, and both of those priests were criminally charged and prosecuted for their crimes. I also repeat what I said on an earlier occasion, that I ask, the Church must ask, for forgiveness from those who have been victims of child sexual abuse by clergy, and from their parents, siblings, and friends. Healing and reconciliation continue to be an essential but not easy goal, given the terrible effects that these sins and crimes can cause in the lives of victims, to whom the Church owes the deepest expression of sorrow and apology. On a personal note, I want to tell you that I've been a bishop now for almost 20 years, and most of them have been overshadowed by the sin and scandal of sexual abuse and its devastating effect on victims, survivors, and their families, on the morale of our priests, and on the faith and even the practice of the faith among the Catholic people, not to mention the general public. It is a cause of profound sorrow and of soul searching for me that we bishops, the Church's pastors, have often failed to grasp the spiritual and moral devastation that results from sexual abuse, either in a misguided attempt to save an abuser's vocation or to shield the Church from scandal. Whatever institutional worries present themselves to me as a bishop as a result of abuse, it takes only one personal meeting with a victim survivor to me to see that any institutional concerns are insignificant compared to the deep spiritual and psychological wounds and suffering that can and often do result from sexual abuse by a priest. Yes, the sacrament of priestly ordination is sacred and it is permanent, but I firmly believe, in the words of Pope St. John Paul early in the crisis, that there is, quote, no place in the priesthood and religious life for those who would harm the young, end quote. All the more so for bishops, several of whom have been identified as offenders and have been removed since 2002, notwithstanding the recent case of Theodore McCarrick still under investigation. In December, I also mentioned the scheduling of masses to be offered in reparation to God for the grievous sin of sexual abuse by clergy. As I said then, for a person of faith, there can be no doubt that evil and sin call for remedies that are profoundly spiritual. In ordinary speech, reparation means making amends to another person or persons for an offense or injustice committed against them. Inasmuch as an offense or injustice is sinful, it also demands that reparation be made to God. The schedule for the 3 Masses, which will be celebrated in different areas of the Archdiocese, can also be found on the website. I have also directed our Office of Safe Environment and the Protection of Children to work with Catholic Charities to organize a support group for victims of clergy sexual abuse. This support group for victims and their families is meant to foster healing and recovery. Catholic Charities will also be training their clinical staff to become credentialed in the field of trauma and sexual abuse treatment, and will develop another support group for survivors of sexual abuse regardless of who the perpetrator was. Their specially trained clinicians will be available to both support groups. As horrific as sexual abuse is by clergy, it only reflects a fraction of the cases of sexual abuse of minors in our country and in the world. And it is my hope that Catholic Charities can bring hope and healing to as many victims as possible. The Archdiocese remains committed to a zero-tolerance policy and the strictest of guidelines regarding safe environment and the protection of children and vulnerable adults. In keeping with the charter and norms that were adopted by the U.S. bishops in 2002, this applies to every single individual who serves the Archdiocese, be they a member of the clergy, a religious, an employee, or a volunteer, all of whom receive training and undergo background checks. I thank Kathleen Noetsako, our Victims Assistance Coordinator, and the staff of the Safe Environment Office for their diligence and their profound commitment to protecting all of God's children.